Hey guys, so today's video is a request. Woohoo, 2 true crime videos in a row. I'm on it, and I've got kind of a face on today. I'm so excited. This request is from Eddie H. Thank you so much for the request, and it is to tell the story of Richard Ramirez, or the Night Stalker. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. If you haven't heard of him, I'm sure you've seen pictures of him. He's kind of like what I would call the poster child of what a serial killer looks like, as in he's used a lot image-wise for basically serial killers. And he's pretty scary looking in that he's got very sharp features, and he also, which I'll touch on as well, identified as a Satanist. So a lot of people like to compare his looks to devilish looks, and he is a pretty scary guy. So Ricardo Ramirez, known as Richard Ramirez, was an American serial killer, serial rapist, and burglar. And we all know that noise is going to go on in the background, so I apologize. His highly publicized home invasion crime spree terrorized the residents of Greater Los Angeles and later the residents of San Francisco from June 1984 to August 1985. Prior to his capture, Ramirez was dubbed the Night Stalker by the news media. Now, Ramirez is not the only killer to be dubbed the Night Stalker. He's just the most famous. But I want to say there's 2 others, but I know for a fact there's 1 other, and I want to say he was the first Night Stalker, or the original Night Stalker. I don't fully remember the story on that one, but there is a very creepy phone call related to that one. So if you guys ever want a video on that, just let me know. He used many weapons, including handguns, knives, a machete, a tire iron, and a hammer. Ramirez, who claimed to be a Satanist, excuse me, I can't talk as usual, never expressed any remorse for his crimes. Now, I'm going to go into, obviously, his crimes and such, but I'm going to touch on his early life. As usual, all of my sources are linked below, but I'm sort of following the layout of the Wikipedia for this story, as I have in the past for some other, more famous stories. But his early life does not excuse what he did, but it does explain it. Ramirez was born in El Paso, Texas on February 29th of 1960. He was the youngest of 5 children. His father, Julian, was prone to fits of anger that often resulted in physical abuse. As a 12-year-old, Richard, or Richie as he was known, was strongly influenced by his older cousin Miguel, who was known as Mike Ramirez, a decorated U.S. Army Green Beret combat veteran who often boasted of his gruesome exploits during the Vietnam War. He shared Polaroid photos of his victims, including Vietnamese women he had raped. In some of the photos, Mike posed with the severed head of a woman he had abused. Mike taught his young cousin some of his military skills, such as killing with stealth. Around this time, Ramirez began to seek escape from his father's violent temper by sleeping in a local cemetery. Now, Ramirez was present on May 4th, 1973, when his cousin Mike fatally shot his wife Jessie in the face with a .38 caliber revolver during a domestic argument. After the shooting, Ramirez became sullen and withdrawn from his family and peers. So this was obviously not only being shown photos from the Vietnam War, that's pretty traumatic in itself. I have an older brother who served in Iraq. I believe it was Iraq, not Afghanistan. And he had some photos of stuff that he didn't do, but stuff that he witnessed there. He just wanted to document it, and seeing that was pretty traumatic. So then add on top of that, witnessing someone getting killed in front of you when you're 13 years old. And there's more to come. Later that year, he moved in with his older sister, Ruth, and her husband Roberto, an obsessive peeping Tom who took Richie along on his nocturnal exploits. Mike was found not guilty of Jesse's murder, this is his older cousin, by reason of insanity, and was released in 1977 after 4 years of incarceration at the Texas State Mental Hospital. His influence over Ramirez continued. The adolescent Ramirez began to develop an affinity for sexual fantasies with violence, including forced bondage and rape. I think a lot of that has to do with everything that he witnessed, was shown, and put through, along with, I guess, going through puberty and the peeping Tom thing. All of this like colluded together. I'm sorry, I'm just like picking my nose on camera. All of this sort of colluded together is colluded even the right word? You know what I'm trying to say? Is sort of a recipe for disaster in that his brain just kind of pieced them together because of everything that he was going through all at once. So that's the only thing I can think of as to why this sort of happened. Again, is not a fucking excuse for what he did. It's disgusting what he did. But all of this is sort of leading to, I want to say a sociopath is one that was put through trauma, and that's why they have no empathy. Not so much a compass for what's right and what's wrong. I think a psychopath is born that way, if I'm not mistaken, and a sociopath develops that through trauma. They sort of shut off all emotion, all empathy, all anything. And what it sounds like is that the only way he could feel something was through this sexual fantasy and through harming people, which is disgusting. And also, I've said this previously in other videos, there are many functioning psychopaths and sociopaths in this world, so don't think that that's like, oh, he's a sociopath, he's a dangerous person. They can absolutely be dangerous, but there are many functioning ones that will tell you, even though they don't have the empathy, even though they don't really care emotionally how they affect other people, and even though a lot of them, their goal is to get what they can out of people, they may only connect themselves with people that they can gain something from. Many of them know what is black and white, what is right and wrong, and they choose not to do what is wrong. They have that function. It's just that the ones that we hear about are these like killers and such. So just want to put that disclaimer up. There are many functioning sociopaths and psychopaths. I'm not shaming them at all. It's a very interesting topic if you ever choose to look into it. And maybe I'll do a video on it one day because I just love the psychology of it. So, let's see. While still in school, Ramirez took a job at a local Holiday Inn where he used his pass key to rob sleeping patrons. His employment ended abruptly after a hotel guest returned to his room to find Ramirez attempting to rape his wife. Although the husband beat Ramirez senseless at the scene, criminal charges were dropped when the couple, who lived out of state, declined to return to testify against him. Ramirez dropped out of Jefferson High School in the 9th grade, and at the age of 22, he moved to California where he settled permanently. So now we will get into the murders. I'm going to touch on each one and what happened. And just trigger warning, these are fucking gruesome, as are most of my videos, so I apologize. Sorry, his foot is out of his footing. Let me fix your foot. There you go. There you go. Coffee break. I'm gonna need it to get through these because these are rough. All right. The first murder is one that was not implicated to Richie at the time, or during his lifetime, actually. This happened on April 10th of 1984. Ramirez murdered 9-year-old May Lunn and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Leung is pronounced differently from what I understand in Chinese and Korean, so I tried to find a pronunciation, and the closest I could find was Lun, but again, I apologize if I'm butchering that. I'm really bad with names, we all know by now. Ramirez murdered 9-year-old Mei Lun in the basement of the hotel where he was living in San Francisco. He raped and beat the girl before stabbing her to death and hanged her body from a pipe. This is Ramirez's first known killing. Was not initially identified as being connected to the subsequent crime spree. In 2009, Ramirez's DNA was matched to a sample obtained at this crime scene. In 2016, officials disclosed evidence of a second suspect identified through a DNA sample retrieved from the scene, who is believed to have been present at Lun's murder. Authorities have not publicly identified the suspect, described as being a juvenile at that time, and have not brought charges due to lack of evidence. My thought on that is, did Ramirez sort of mentor someone and that person hopefully didn't continue that life, or did they continue it separately? Being influenced by his older cousin Mike, it would make sense that he would want to pass that on. As sick as it sounds, say you learn a hobby from someone that you look up to. Say you go fishing with an uncle a lot, and then you have a nephew and you think, wow, I would love to share those memories with my nephew like my uncle did with me. I want to pass that down. I'm wondering if that's what happened in this case, as it was a juvenile that they're saying the DNA was connected to. Although I don't understand the lack of evidence if his DNA was there, unless they're saying lack of evidence that he committed the crime. Maybe he was there and escaped or something. I'm not sure. Now we get on to the crimes that he was known to be involved in. On June 28th of 1984, 79-year-old Jenny Vinco was found brutally murdered in her apartment in Los Angeles. She had been stabbed repeatedly while sleeping in her bed, and her throat slashed so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. Ramirez's fingerprint was found on a mesh screen he removed to gain access through an open window. On March 17th, 1985, Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home in Rosemead, California, shooting her in the face with a .22 caliber handgun after she pulled into her garage. She survived when the bullet ricocheted off the keys she held in her hands as she lifted them to protect herself. Inside the house was her roommate, Dale Yoshi Okazaki, 34 years old, who heard the gunshot and ducked behind a counter when she saw Ramirez enter the kitchen. When she raised her head, he shot her once in the forehead, killing her. Within an hour of the Rosemead home invasion, Ramirez pulled 30-year-old Celian, or Veronica Yu, out of her car in Monterey Park, California, and shot her twice with a .22 caliber handgun and fled. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The two murders and attempted third in a single day attracted extensive coverage from the news media, who dubbed the curly-haired attacker with bulging eyes and a widespread rotting teeth the walk-in killer and the valley intruder. On March 27th of 1985, Ramirez entered a home that he had burglarized a year earlier in Whittier, California, at approximately 2 a.m. and killed the sleeping Vincent Charles Zazzara, age 64, with a gunshot to his head from a .22 caliber handgun. Zazzara's wife, Maxine, age 44, was awakened by the gunshot, and Ramirez beat her and bound her hands while demanding to know where her valuables were. While he ransacked the room, Maxine escaped her bonds and retrieved a shotgun from under her bed, which was not loaded. The infuriated Ramirez shot her 3 times with the .22, then fetched a large carving knife from the kitchen. He mutilated her body by stabbing her several times, then gouged out her eyes and placed them in a jewelry box, which he left with. The autopsy determined that the mutilations were post-mortem. Ramirez left footprints from a pair of Avia sneakers in the flower beds, which the police photographed and cast. This was virtually the only evidence that the police had at the time. Bullets found at the scene were matched to those found at previous attacks, and the police realized a serial killer was at large. Vincent and Maxine's bodies were discovered by their son, Peter. On May 14th of 1985, Ramirez returned to Monterey Park and entered the home of Bill Doy, 66 years old, and his disabled wife, Lillian, 56 years old. Surprising Doy in his bedroom, Ramirez shot him in the face with a .22 semi-automatic pistol as Doy went for his own handgun. After beating the mortally wounded man into unconsciousness, Ramirez entered Lillian's bedroom, bound her with thumb cuffs, then raped her after he had ransacked the home for valuables. Bill Doy died of his injuries while in the hospital. On the night of May 29, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Monrovia, California, and stopped at the house of Maybelle Ma Bell, 83 years old, and her disabled sister, Florence Nettie Lang, 81. Finding a hammer in the kitchen, he bludgeoned and bound Lang in her bedroom, then bound and bludgeoned Bell before using an electrical cord to shock the woman. After raping Lang, he used Bell's lipstick to draw a pentagram on her thigh, as well as on the walls of both bedrooms. The women were found 2 days later, alive but comatose. Bell later died of her injuries. The next day, Ramirez drove the same car to Burbank, California, and sneaked into the home of Carol Kyle, age 42. At gunpoint, he bound Kyle and her 11-year-old son with handcuffs, then ransacked the house. He released Kyle to direct him to where the family's valuables were. He then raped her repeatedly. Ramirez also repeatedly ordered her not to look at him, telling her at one point that he would cut her eyes out. He fled the scene after retrieving the child from the closet and binding the two together again with handcuffs. You getting ready for a nap? Be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Now, of course, the sun is right on my face, but whatever. You don't have to look at me. You can just do something else and listen. So, continuing. On the night of July 2nd, 1985, he drove a stolen car to Arcadia, California, and randomly selected the house of Mary Louise Cannon, age 75. After quietly entering the widowed grandmother's home, he found her asleep in the bedroom. He bludgeoned her into unconsciousness with a lamp and then repeatedly stabbed her using a 10-inch butcher knife from her kitchen. She was found dead at the scene. On July 15, 1985, Ramirez broke into a home in Sierra Madre, California, and bludgeoned a 16-year-old by the name of Whitney Bennett with a tire iron as she slept in her bedroom. After searching in vain for a knife in the kitchen, Ramirez attempted to strangle the girl with a telephone cord. He was startled to see electrical sparks emanate from the cord, and when his victim began to breathe, he fled the house believing that Jesus Christ had intervened and saved her. Bennett survived the savage beating, although 478 stitches were required to close the lacerations on her scalp. On July 7th of 1985, Ramirez burglarized the home of Joyce Lucille Nelson, age 61, in Monterey Park. Finding her asleep on her living room couch, he beat her to death using his fists and kicking her in the head. A shoe print from an Avia sneaker was left imprinted on her face. After cruising 2 other neighborhoods, he returned to Monterey Park and chose the home of Sophie Dickman, age 63. Ramirez assaulted and handcuffed Dickman at gunpoint, attempted to rape her, and stole her jewelry. When she swore to him that he had taken everything of value, he told her to, quote, swear on Satan. On July 20th of 1985, Ramirez purchased a machete before driving a stolen Toyota to Glendale, California. He chose the home of Leila Needing, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that one wrong, age 66, and her husband Maxon, age 68. He burst into the sleeping couple's bedroom and hacked them with the machete. and then killed them with shots to the head, from a .22 caliber handgun. He further mutilated their bodies with the machete before robbing the house of valuables. After quickly fencing the stolen items from the needing residents, Ramirez drove to Sun Valley. At approximately 4:15 a.m., he broke into the home of the Covenant family. He shot the sleeping Chanarong Covenant in the head with a .25 caliber handgun, killing him instantly. Then repeatedly raped and beat some kid. He bound the couple's terrified 8-year-old son before dragging some kid around the house to reveal the location of any valuable items, which he stole. During his assault, he demanded that she swear to Satan that she was not hiding any money from him. On August 6, 1985, Ramirez drove to Northridge, California, and broke into the home of Chris and Virginia Peterson. He crept into the bedroom, startled Virginia, age 27, and shot her in the face with a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. He then shot Chris in the neck and attempted to flee. Chris fought back while avoiding being hit by 2 more shots during the struggle before Ramirez managed to escape. The couple survived their injuries. On August 8, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Diamond Bar, California, and chose the home of Sakina Abawath, age 27, and her husband Elias, age 31. Sometime after 2:30 a.m., he entered the house and went into the master bedroom. He instantly killed the sleeping Elias with a shot to the head from a .25 caliber handgun. He handcuffed and beat Sakina, I'm so sorry, I'm really bad with names, Sakina, while forcing her to reveal the locations of the family's jewelry, then brutally raped her. He repeatedly demanded that she swear on Satan that she would not scream during his assaults. When the couple's 3-year-old son entered the bedroom, Ramirez tied the child up and continued to rape Sakina. After Ramirez left the home, Sakina untied her son and sent him to the neighbors for help. Ramirez, who had been following the media coverage of his crimes, left LA and headed to the San Francisco Bay Area. On August 18th of 1985, he entered the home of Peter and Barbara Pan. He shot the sleeping Peter, age 66, in the temple with a .25 caliber handgun. At the crime scene, Ramirez, he then beat and sexually assaulted Barbara, age 62, before shooting her in the head and leaving her for dead. At the crime scene, Ramirez used lipstick to scrawl a pentagram and the phrase, "Jack the Knife," on the bedroom wall. When it was discovered that the ballistics and shoe print evidence from the LA crime scenes matched the Pan crime scene, San Francisco's then mayor, Dianne Feinstein, divulged the information in a televised press conference. This leak infuriated the detectives in the case, as they knew the killer would be following media coverage, which gave him the opportunity to destroy crucial forensic evidence. Ramirez, who had indeed been watching the press, dropped his size 11.5 Avia sneakers over the side of the Golden Gate Bridge that night. He remained in the area a few more days before heading back to the LA area. On August 24th of 1985, Ramirez traveled 76 miles south of LA in a stolen orange Toyota to Mission Viejo. That night, he arrived at the home of James Romero Jr., who had just returned from a family vacation in Mexico. Romero's son, 13-year-old James Romero III, happened to be awake and heard Ramirez's footsteps outside of the house. Thinking there was a prowler, James went to wake his parents and Ramirez fled the scene. James raced outside and noted the color, make, and style of his car, as well as a partial license plate number. Romero contacted the police with information, believing James had chased away a thief. After this encounter, Ramirez broke into the home of Bill Carnes, age 30, and his fiancée, Inez Erickson, age 29, through a back door. Ramirez entered the sleeping couple's bedroom and awakened Carnes. When he cocked his .25 caliber handgun, he shot Carnes 3 times in the head before returning his attention to Erickson. Ramirez told the terrified woman that he was the Night Stalker and forced her to swear that she loved Satan as he beat her with his fists and bound her with neckties from their closet. After stealing what he could find, Ramirez dragged Erickson into another room to rape her. He then demanded cash and more jewelry, making her swear on Satan there was no more. Before leaving the home, Ramirez told Erickson, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." Erickson untied herself and went to a neighbor's house to get help for her severely injured fiance. Surgeons removed 2 of the bullets from his head, and he survived his injuries. Well, now I have to really apologize because there's going to be this little music playing in the background and a cow mooing, so sorry about that, but it's someone's current favorite toy. Erickson gave a detailed description of the assailant to investigators, and police obtained a cast of Ramirez's footprint from the Romero house. The stolen car was found on August 28th in Wilshire Center, Los Angeles, and police obtained a single fingerprint from the rearview mirror despite Ramirez's careful efforts to wipe the car clean of his fingerprints. The print was positively identified as belonging to Ramirez, who was described as a 25-year-old drifter from Texas, with a long rap sheet that included many arrests for traffic and illegal drug violations. Law enforcement officials decided to release the media a mugshot of Ramirez from a December 12, 1984 arrest for auto theft, and the Night Stalker finally had a face. At the police press conference, it was announced, "We know who you are now, and soon everyone else will. There will be no place you can hide." So on August 30th of 1985, Ramirez took a bus to Tucson, Arizona to visit his brother, unaware that he had become the lead story in virtually every major newspaper and television news program across California. After failing to meet his brother, he returned to Los Angeles early on the morning of August 31st. He walked past police officers who were staking out the bus terminal in hopes of catching the killer should he attempt to flee on an outbound bus, and into a convenience store in East Los Angeles. After noticing a group of elderly Mexican women fearfully identifying him as El Matador, or the killer, Ramirez saw his face on the front pages of the newspaper rack and fled the store in a panic. After running across the Santa Ana freeway, he attempted to carjack a woman, but was chased away by bystanders who pursued him. After hopping over several fences and attempting 2 more carjackings, he was eventually subdued by a group of residents, one of whom had struck him over the head with a metal bar in the pursuit. The group held Ramirez down and relentlessly beat him until the police arrived and took him into custody. Jury selection for his trial began on July 22nd of 1988. At his first court appearance, Ramirez raised a hand with a pentagram drawn on it and yelled, "Hail Satan." On August 3rd of 1988, the Los Angeles Times reported that some jail employees overheard Ramirez planning to shoot the prosecutors with a gun, which Ramirez intended to have smuggled into the courtroom. Consequently, a metal detector was installed outside and intensive searches were conducted on people entering. On August 14th, the trial was interrupted because one of the jurors, Phyllis Singletary, did not arrive at the courtroom. Later that day, she was found shot to death in her apartment. The jury was terrified as they could not help wondering whether Ramirez had somehow directed this event from inside his prison cell and whether he could reach other jurors. However, it was ultimately determined that Ramirez was not responsible for Singletary's death, as she was shot and killed by her boyfriend, who later committed suicide with the same weapon in a hotel. The alternate juror who replaced Singletary was too frightened to return to her home. On September 20th of 1989, Ramirez was convicted of all charges: 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. During the penalty phase of trial on November 7th, 1989, he was sentenced to die in California's gas chamber. He stated to reporters after the death sentences, quote, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." The trial cost $1.8 million, which at the time made it the most expensive in the history of California, until surpassed by the O.J. Simpson case. By the end of the trial, Ramirez had fans who were writing him letters and paying him visits. Beginning in 1985, Doreen Loy wrote him nearly 75 letters during his incarceration. In 1988, Ramirez proposed to Doreen, and October 3rd, 1996, they were married in California's San Quentin State Prison. For many years before Ramirez's death, Doreen stated that she would commit suicide when he was executed. However, she eventually left Ramirez. By the time of his death, Ramirez was engaged to a 23-year-old female writer. By some estimates, he would have been in his early 70s before his execution was carried out due to California's lengthy appeals process. And speaking of appeals, on August 7th of 2006, Ramirez's first round of state appeals ended unsuccessfully when the California Supreme Court upheld his convictions and death sentence. On September 7th of 2006, the California Supreme Court denied his request for a rehearing. Ramirez had appeals pending until the time of his death. A psychiatrist by the name of Michael H. Stone describes Ramirez as a made psychopath as opposed to a born psychopath, which is what I talked about in the beginning of the video. He says that Ramirez's schizoid personality disorder contributed to his indifference to the suffering of his victims and his untreatability. Ramirez actually died of complications secondary to B-cell lymphoma at Marin General Hospital in Green Bay, California on June 7th of 2013. He had also been affected by chronic substance abuse and chronic hepatitis C viral infection. At 53 years old, he had been on death row for more than 23 years. A little side fact is that Ramirez actually lived for about a year in 1985, and this was during the spring, I believe, at the famous Cecil Hotel, which is famous for kind of being possibly haunted, but maybe cursed. A lot of deaths have happened there, and a lot of deaths have happened around it, including the famous, I can't remember if I've done a video on this or not yet, or if I just did a piece on it in my video about the Cecil Hotel, but Elisa Lam, if you've ever heard of her, if you haven't, holy shit, look it up. That's one of the creepiest cases I've ever seen. But that happened at the same hotel where Richard Ramirez lived during these, partially during these sprees. I will link that up here somewhere and down in the description below if you're interested in watching the video on the Cecil Hotel. That is my video about Richard Ramirez. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry that most of it was me reading from a script, but this was a lot of information. And unfortunately right now, I don't have the time to sit and edit and make sure that I'm reading every line to the camera. So I apologize for the quality of videos lately, but I know most of you completely understand. I'm a little preoccupied with the baby. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again, Eddie H, for this request. This was one that I definitely needed to touch on. There's a lot of heavy hitters that I really need to touch on. But one thing that I'm pretty proud about with this channel is that I've got a lot of videos that people don't talk about. Especially my Jeremy Wade Dell video is by far my most popular video. And the reason I made that was because I couldn't find any information on it. So I'm really happy to bring these videos because while most things can be just Googled and found, it's different when you can find a video that you can just listen to instead of having to sit and read through it, especially if you're more of like an auditory learner. So I'm happy that I can do these. If you guys like this video, please hit the thumbs up button below. If you have any requests for videos, true crime or otherwise, please leave those in the comments below. If I haven't done your video yet, I'm either still doing research on it, or nothing really came of it, or I don't know. But I do write down all of your requests, and I do my best to hit on all of them. Some of them are very extensive, so they're going to take me a long time, and some of them, I've had some far in the past where they were just rumored things and nothing really happened of them. So, but I promise you, I do get to all of your requests. If you'd like to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button as I upload new videos every Wednesday. And other than that, I will see you guys next week.